Hello, my name is Milvad and welcome to this crash course. In this crash course, we will working with Laravel Prompt and make a new command line application. Laravel Prompt is a new package that developed by core Laravel team, and it helps to make a beautiful and user-friendly forms for command line application. So let's go to, we can if you want to read the documentation about the Laravel prompt, you can go to laravel.com docs, and it must be version 10 or higher than, because it's a new package and I think 1 week ago released, and also prompts in the official packages you can access to prompt. So it's a Laravel prompt, and if you want to contribute or see the source code of the Laravel prompt, you can go to github.com and Laravel and prompt, and you can start the Laravel prompt, and that's it. So let's install the Laravel prompt. So before install the Laravel prompt, I want to make a new command and use the Artisan Console of the Laravel in the Illuminate. So let's make a new command. For example, I want to ask about the, for example, GitHub info command. So let's go to console commands and also GitHub commands. So I don't need command, app GitHub info is good, and let's remove the warning. Is not important to implement these warnings. So here I want to ask the username of the GitHub. You can use the ask method. Here I can say what is your GitHub address. So let's try it. I use CM there because it's very beautiful than CMD of the Windows. So we can use PHP Artisan and also app GitHub info. It's show the inputs that I can write the GitHub address. For example, milvad dev. So I can use didom to check it. Milvad dev, and you can see it's correctly working. So, and also you can use the secret is used for password or security information. For example, you can when I write my GitHub username, there is no showing any text or a string. So, and I have another, for example, we have a confirm, and for example is about the yes or no. For example, are you wish to continue? You can say yes or no, and the default is no. If you want to change default to true, you can use true here for second parameter. So it's a Artisan Console in the Laravel. We have a lot of methods, for example, anticipate or choice method, and if you wish, I can make a new video about the Artisan Console and work with them. So it's the Artisan Console, and you can see what is the what we can do with the Artisan Console in the Laravel. But we don't need to install any packages for example, make a simple command line application. So let's go to start with the Laravel prompt and see what is the Laravel prompt and what is the difference between Artisan Console that exists in the core of the Laravel and also Laravel prompt. So let's copy that and paste here, and it's not need to, for example, publish the service provider or config file. It automatically can work with them. So let's go, and I remove this, and I can cut this question. So let's install. So the Laravel prompt is installed successfully, and the version is 0.1.4, and I think it's not stable yet. So let's work with text, and for example, username, I declare a new variable and use die-dump. So for use text, you can use the text function that is helpers in the Laravel prompt, and you can see you must use function and text. So here we have a label parameter that you can pass a GitHub address. So let's go to test it. I clear the command line, and again here you can see it's a little changed the style of the question. For example, I want to say milvat dev, and the result is also the same. It's a text, and you can, for example, use a placeholder. For example, milvat dev, for example, and like that. So let's test again, and also you can use the milvat dev. So maybe you want to add a default value. For example, if for example, if here ask question what is the GitHub address, if the value is null, the default value of this question, for example, is Laravel. You can pass the second parameters is a default and is a string. So for example, for example, Taylor Outwell, and you can see the default value is pasted here, is the top of the box, and if I click the enter and don't write anything, you can see the value of this question is Taylor Outwell. So let's remove this default and let's test it. We need to require to this input, and let's test again. So I didn't write anything, but I need to write something is a required rule. If you want to add a sum rule, you can pass a require and to true. And let's test again. If I don't write anything and enter, here is error required, and we should write something. So, and it's a required parameter. If you need to write something, you can change it to true. So Laravel Prompt have a ability to validate your input. For example, you want to validate. This validate pass a closure or null, but we need to pass a closure. So we can write function string value, and here. So here you can doing your validation. For example, return strlen value. It must be upper than, for example, 3 character, and if is not true, sorry, return, for example, the error message. For example, the here it must be GitHub username, not GitHub address. The GitHub username, it must be upper than 3, for example, or 3 character. So let's test again. Here I write milvat.dev, it's work correctly, and if, for example, I write mi, and here you can see the error validation, it's successfully show. And also you can, I add a comment here, you can use a arrow function. If you want to use arrow function, for example, you can add your validation. For example, in the docs, show an example with the match, and for example true, and check your for example rule. For example, you can use strlen value, and for example it must be, for example, 5, and if it's not 5, for example, the GitHub username, it must be 5 characters. And you can write for example another rule, and let's test. So I clear the command line. So here if I write, for example, milvat.dev match case true, so let's check it. Oh, the default is null, so let's test it. It's a bug, but let's test again. So For example, milva dev is not 5 character, and show the GitHub username. And also if I write milout, and you can see the GitHub username is must be 5 character. So I clear the command line. It's a validate. So I can comment here and write here text. So it's a here the next section is the password, and you can write here password. So here you can use the password, and here you can see in the helpers. So the password is a similar with the text, but the password is you can didn't anything. You can see anything. For example, in the label, for example, what is your GitHub password? So let's test again. Here you can see the question, and for example I write milvat, and you can see it's for password, and you can see anything. And when enter, you can see in the diagram the correct value is here. So it's a label, and you can add a placeholder. Is a placeholder. I work with them. Require it and validate. For example, if you want to require it is true. So if I didn't write anything, you can see the required is correctly work. And what is a GitHub password? And for example, write something. So it's a required, and also we have a validation again, and you can write your validation, and that's it, is a password. So the next section is a confirm, and here is a confirm, and also I comment this section, and in the DD is confirm. So you can use the confirm, and here you have a label. For example, in the label, for example, you want to did you allow to access the GitHub info, and let's test this confirm. For example, you can you want to give your you want to allow to GitHub info, and you can add a question yes or no. For example, did you allow to access the GitHub info? And for example, the default is yes, and for example write no. For example, you write a something. For example, you can add it to if, for example. We can declare a variable and if, but I write in. For example, if the user access to the, for example, GitHub user, for example, fetch the GitHub data, for example, and doing something here. It's return true or false, and you can change the default value. The default, for example, is true. You can use the false, and you can see here is the no, and you can change the yes or no value. For example, for yes, you can say accept or allow. For no, for example, no hello, for example. And let's no why let's test again, but is also the same. For example, I had the yes and no here. So I think it's maybe a bug, and why this be happen? Let's I check this section and pause the video and come back again. Guys, I think it's a bug, but after this video I review this section, and let's write to do bug for yes no text. So, and if is a real bug, I fix it and add a new PR on the Laravel prompts. So the next parameter is required. If you want to say you must access for example us to GitHub info, you can pass you can pass required true, and for example write no, you can see it's required to write yes, and that's it. So, and you can write your required error message here. For example, you must allow us to access the GitHub info. So here if I write no, you can see the error message correctly worked. So I comment this section, and the next section is the select. So here the select, and also is the select. Select is a very fun input, and I like it. So write select and use the select function or helper, and here in the parameters, the first parameter is label. For example, which which frameworks did you working now, and also you must add pass a parameter is about the option. You can pass a collection or array of a string or array. For example, Laravel Symfony, and for example Fiber. Fiber is a Golang framework. So let's test again. Here you can see it's like when you write vendor publish, the style of the vendor publish command is like this, and you can write your correct framework. For example, I worked with the Fiber. I write 2 instead of the Fiber, and you can see the Fiber is here, and you can access to the correct value of the select. And you can add a default. For example, the default is Laravel. It's Laravel, and if I enter without any number, is the default value is Laravel. And you can let's cut them, and So you can pass a key and value is for example like Laravel, and here it's Laravel. For example, symphony, and also fiber is fiber. So let's test again. The for example, the instead of the 1 or 3, it's the text. For example, if I write 2, the error is say valid 2 is not value of the 2 is not valid because we don't have any 2 item. For example, I write symphony and the symphony is correctly written. So it's a options, and you can, for example, use the collection here. For example, you can write a collection, or for example options collect, and for example Laravel symphony, for example fiber and all, and you can write all. It's when you write all, it's like a array, it's not options. Yes. So let's test again. You can see the data is correctly worked. So, and we have a another problem is about the school. If you have more than, for example, 5 option, you can customize the school. For example, I write the live wire view JS, and for example Java or Spring, because I love it. So and you can customize the scroll of this. For example, let's write a lot of items and show you the scroll. So I pause and come back again. So we have for example, I think 11 items, and I pass a school is 2. So let's you can see the default value is 5, but is about the for example more than 20 items. For example, you want to fetch all, for example, products category of DB, and it's about, for example, 50 count, and you can use a school, but the default is 5. I change it to true, and if you scroll, you can see the 2 by 2 items is scrolling, and you can change it. The default is 5, and you can change it. So I comment in, and also you can validate, and I show in upper in here I show how to validate. So the next item is Multiselect. So I think it's a good item, is option is good. So for example the frameworks, and you can use the multi-select function, and here in the label you can say again which frameworks, and here is which framework did you working now. So and options is options again, and let's test again and see the result. So here you can the default is none, but you can, for example, write 0 and frameworks. So for example 0, and you can see the in the array of frameworks you can see the 0, for example 0 and 1, and you can see the 0 and 1 here. And so you can add a default value, but you can add a array of a default value. You can, for example, write a Laravel and Golang, for example. I think we don't have a Golang. For example, native PHP. So here you can see if you write didn't anything, you can see the default value is this. And so you can see the default is support collection, and the option also support a collection. Also we have a scroll, required, and valid. It's similar to select helper, but the multi-select is about the select multiple for example items. If you want, you can use a multi-select. So the next section it's about the suggest. It's a cool function. For example, you want to suggest, for example, you can write, for example, lang, for example, and you can use the suggest and which language is best for backend. And for options you can pass a array, closure, collection, and array of a string. For example, you can say PHP and go, and also use lang, and let's test again in the CMD, not in the CMD of the PHP. You can see which language is the best for backend. If I write PHP, let's so I think it's a new bug again. When I write PHP, it must be write the suggestion, but is not working. I think it's also a bug I can add. And it's when use a suggest, when for example write a ph, for example ph, the suggest when you add, for example, use a tab, the PHP also automatically writes in the input, but now it's not working correctly. So let's indent here, and you can add a placeholder, default value, scroll, and require and validate. Is most of these functions are the same, but the working are different. So it's about the suggest. If you want, for example, ask a question and you want to add some suggest, you can use the suggest function. So I can comment here, and the next section is interested function is about the search. If you want to search, for example, in your option or in your select, you can use the search So let's write, for example, you can write here, for example, search the framework that you for example like it or love it, like it. So, and in the options you must pass a closure, and a string value is automatically injected. And for example, if strlen, for example, the value is not less than 0, for example, doing something, and if is here is, for example, return a empty array. So you can write like this. Here, for example, let's indent here. So you can, for example, so let's here, for example, if we want to search in the frameworks, you can, for example, use option and search and the value, and just this. Here you can use, okay, and we don't need to strict. So let's see, for example, I write Laravel and must be array. I think it's not about my code, it's about the core of the Laravel prompt. And oh, here is the search Laravel, and it's about the choice, because I think is use the choice, but for example return a Laravel. Yes, I think also a new bug here, and but you can search in the, or for example in your database, or for example in your variable or something like that, but you can validate in your validate your options here, and also you can pass a placeholder. So and the search section is the last section in the Laravel prompt. But if any updates added to a Laravel prompt, it's a lot of updates, or when a stable version is released, I get a new video, and let's contribute on them. For example, I add a GitHub address for prompt, and that's it. I hope this video is very helpful for you, and let's drink water or soda, because my body is very dry, and let's go. So I hope this video is helpful for you, and if you like my video, you can like my video and subscribe my channel. And if you have any comments, you can add comment under my video. Until next video, goodbye.